All right, today we're going to complete Unit 2, Lesson 2, and it should be on the back side of the notes that was provided to you yesterday. We are going to take everything that we've learned about solving 1- and 2-step equations, as well as what we've learned about dealing with variable terms that when there's more than one, if they're on the same side and the opposite side, and then finally what we've learned with adding parentheses. So we're going to go ahead and make our final list right now of how to put all these steps together, okay? And the way that I taught them to you, we're really going to work backwards through them, starting with what you've learned most recently. And I'm going to color code. So step number 1, if you have any parentheses, we're going to apply the distributive property. Step number 2 is if we have more than one variable term, we still want to circle those, and if they're on the same side, then we will combine like terms. And the signs that we use to put them together with will be the same as their original signs. If the variable terms are on opposite sides, we're going to still circle them, but we will need to use inverses to combine them. All right? And those inverses are always going to be addition or subtraction. Okay, so subtract. Our third step will be to move the constant term away from the variable using addition or subtraction. And my last step will be to break up the coefficient and the variable using the inverse, which will be multiplication and division. All right, if you need to pause the video to finish filling in these notes, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, let's go ahead and start on our examples. Starting with number 1. I am going to be color coding each of the steps the same way I color coded them while we filled them out here. For you, it should be on the same side of the paper to view, so it should be easy to remember any color coding that you've chosen to use in case your colors don't match mine. Okay, my step number 1 is always going to be to distribute. In this case, I only need to do that one time, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring down what it equals. 3g plus 9 minus g equals 17. That is step number 1. Step number 2, I need to circle any variable terms that I have, and then I need to combine them. So 3g minus 1g is 2g. My step 3 is to do the inverse operation of my constant term. In this case, I need to subtract it. Bring down the 2g. 17 minus 9 gives me 8. And finally, step 4. I need to do the inverse to break up the coefficient and the variable. In this case, the inverse is division. So 2 divided by 2, 8 divided by 2, and I get my final answer. Whoops, that should be a 2. And then I get my final answer. 8 divided by 2 is 4. I know I did that fairly quickly, but I did color code and label each step as I completed it. One thing that I really should be including here that I had forgotten to do was, let's pick a color I didn't use. How about pink? Okay, so I'm going to do my rose line in pink here. I did a decent job keeping everything lined up, but it would have been a lot easier if I had drawn that rose line from the beginning. okay? Let's go ahead and complete example 2 together, starting with step 1. Step 1 is to distribute anything in front of the parenthesis. So I'm going to distribute the -4. -4 times 5 is -20. -4 times -v, so negative and negative is positive. 4v. Bring down the equal, -60. Also, don't forget to bring down this v that's in the front of the problem. Now I can go to step 2, which is to circle my variable terms. I can see right now that both variable terms are on the left side of the rows line, so I'm going to simply combine them. 4v plus 1v is 5v. Bring down the -20, bring down the -60 in the equal. Step 3, move away the constant term. So instead of -20, I'm going to add 20 to both sides. -20 and +20 cancel. Bring down the equal sign. And then -60 plus 20 is going to give me -40. And my final step, break up this variable term from the coefficient. So divide by 5. 5 divided by 5 leaves me with just 1v. -40 divided by +5 will leave me with a -8. All right, if you need to rewind and rewatch any of that, if I did it a little too quickly, I'm sorry. You can rewind and kind of re-listen to it again if needed. If you're feeling okay with variables that are on the same side, I'm going to step it up a little bit with my next 2 examples. All right, so let's start looking at example 3. My step number 1 is still going to be distributive property. Whenever I see parentheses, it doesn't matter if I am simplifying an algebraic expression or solving an algebraic equation. I always want to get rid of parentheses first if possible. So 3 times x and 3 times -2, and then we're going to bring down everything else. All right, step 2. Let's circle all of our variable terms. 8x, 3x, and then I see a 5x over here. So I have variable terms that are on the same side and on the opposite sides, okay? So here's how you can put all of those together without doing additional work or having to make the work that you show seem more difficult, all right? The first thing I'm going to do is bring this 5x over to the left by subtracting it, all right? So minus 5x from both sides, this cancels out. And now what I do, now that everything here is on the same side, okay, I have 8x plus 3x is 11x, and then subtract the 5x, and that gives me a 6x. So I moved the variable term from the left, from the right to the left. Then all 3 of my variable terms were together on the left-hand side, and then whatever their signs were, I kept them the same at that point. So a positive 8x, a positive 3x, and a minus 5x. And I put all those together, and it gave me 6x. Now I'm going to do step 3. So do the opposite of the constant term. All right. Negative 6 plus 6 disappears. And then I have equals 12 over here. Bring down your 6x. Step number 4. Break up that coefficient from the variable using the inverse operation, which so far has pretty much seemed to be division most of the time. And now I have x equals 2. Hopefully that step number 2 there didn't throw you off too much. We are about to step it up just a little bit with our example number 4. All right, example number 4, beginning with step 1, I need to distribute to get rid of these parentheses. Bring down the equals, bring down the 6x, and then I'm going to pause for a moment. I see a negative in front of another set of parentheses. I want you to remember that that is a negative 1, and we have a second parenthesis, so we need to distribute a second time. So negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 1 times negative 34 is a positive 34. Okay, so we've done step 1. Now let's do step 2. I'm going to circle all of my variable terms. All right. Now, thus far, I have been always moving my variable terms to the left, and I'm going to continue doing that. All right, but this time I'm going to be moving 2 variable terms to the left. So I have negative 6x, because I'm going to do the inverse operation to move it across the rows line, negative 6, and positive 2x. Negative 6x and a positive 2x. So those will cancel, those will cancel. Now let's combine all 3 of the variable terms that are on the left. I'm going to do 14x plus 2x gives me 16x. 16x minus 6x gives me 10x. Now, if you wanted to do 14 minus 6 and get 8 and then 8 plus 2, you still would have gotten to your 10x. Now I'm going to bring down the 6, bring down the 34, and then move on to step 3. Step 3 is to do the inverse of the constant term. Bring down 10x. And then I'm going to do 34 plus 6, and that will give me 40. And then finally, divide by, whoops, I need to change my color. Step 4 is orange. Divide by your coefficient. All right, and so I have x equals 4. And that is my final answer. Here's what I would like all of you to do. If you turn your paper back over to what we did yesterday, there was a section called Put It All Together. And I told you to skip that section and to save it for our next lesson, which is this one here. I want you to practice these 4 examples now on your own. If you need to use the bottom of your paper to help you have more space to show your work, please feel free to do that. I know that these include more writing than our fewer steps with equations did, okay? So pause this video and then at least give 5 and 6 a try before you unpause it again. So I'm going to give you just a moment to pause it. All right, I've completed 5 and 6. I did my best to show my work inside the box provided. Hopefully you're doing pretty well with this. If not, of course, pause your video and ask Miss Brown. And I do want to say that in step 2, a lot of people have not been circling the variable terms, and that is very, very visually helpful to you, along with drawing the rose line. If you draw that rose line and you draw those circles, it's very easy to see if those circles are on the same side of the rose line or if they're on opposite sides of the rose line. It is important that you continue practicing with all of these strategies that I'm trying to get you accustomed to practicing. All right? At this point, go ahead and give numbers 7 and 8 a try. So pause your video and just try to work them out. Here's my example or practice example number 7, worked all the way through. Notice that in this practice example, the 2 circled variable terms were on opposite sides, so I did have to subtract the 3x to put them together. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and get started on number 4. Well, our 4th one, but technically it's example number 8 down here in our practice. Okay, so there's my first step. Let's go ahead and circle my variable terms. And so they're on opposite sides, so I'm going to change the sign of the 3x to move it over. And now I'm ready to move over my constant term. And then I could, in my last step, divide by 1, but it's not going to change anything. My final answer is just x equals 2. All right, this is the end of this video lesson. However, after you complete this lesson, there is not an online assignment for you to complete. What I would like for you to do is to work with a partner and complete this review activity. So I'd like to explain to you how this works so that you already know before you come and get the paper from me. So you will be given a puzzle that looks like what you're seeing right now, and each of the puzzle pieces are labeled with a letter. You will not cut these apart until on your own piece of paper you have provided all of the work for solving every one of the equations. And I'm going to show you how I'd like to see you label it. All right? So I'm going to start with card A, and I'm going to say, okay, card A, and then I'm going to label this equation number 1. I'm going to write this down as A1 on my paper, and then I'm going to copy the question. Okay. You are going to show all the work that is necessary to solve this example or this practice problem, okay, all the way properly until you get x equals an answer. Then, next on your piece of paper, you will say A2. That's card A, problem 2, and you're going to label it there for me. That way, when I assess your work, I can find it all very easily, and your paper is going to be very organized as well. You're going to continue solving every equation on every single card, and then that's all that you're going to do until you finish. If you see something like, let me use a different color, let's say green. If you see this on a card, that is not an equation. That's going to be one of the answers that you get after you solve one of the equations. So don't worry about this one. And actually, if you look at card E, you won't have to solve a single equation from card E because card E is just a bunch of possible answer choices, all right? All right, so that's what I'd like for you and your partner to begin working on now. But let's go talk about what you're going to do when you finish, okay? When you finish all of after all the work is shown on your own paper, and I went ahead and typed this out for you, then you will start with the hands-on part of our activity, which is cutting out each of the 12 squares. Then over on Mrs. Brown's bookshelf, there will be a stack of different colors of paper and also some glue. You will, with your partner, piece the puzzle back together. That shouldn't say mathing, it should say by matching the equations up beside their answer choices. So if I have an equation and I solved it on my paper and I got the answer x equals 2, I'm going to find the puzzle piece x equals 2, and then on my paper they should be matched up. I'm just making something up, but that would be the equation and that would be the answer, and you would put those pieces so that they're touching, and then you would continue putting more and more squares and building it until it again looks like a 3x4 square or rectangle. Okay? Once you double check that all of your equations match up with their correct answers, then you want to glue it down. Make sure both names are at the top of the paper. Staple your work to the back so that you can receive full credit, and turn it in to your correct colored shelf based on your class period. All right? Go ahead and try to get started on this. If you need a little more clarification, ask Miss Brown. All right? That's the end of our lesson.